Hello, everyone. My name is Gil Penalosa, and this is Cities for Everyone, the webinar, where every other Tuesday I invite fascinating people to share their stories, their knowledge, their experience, so that all of us can become better advocates on creating cities that are equitable, sustainable, and fun. Originally, I'm from Bogota, Colombia, where I led the construction of over 200 parks. And then I moved to Canada 26 years ago to Toronto and created 880 Cities, a nonprofit 20 years ago. And I've been very fortunate to have worked in over 350 cities around the world. And this webinar is a way of giving back. We are close to the 100, which will be in December, but today we have an amazing guest. We have Phil Ginsburg, who's the executive director of San Francisco's Parks and Recreation. San Francisco has an amazing park system. It was the first city in the US where everyone has a park within a short 10-minute walk. And today he's going to be talking about those parks and transforming the JFK Promenade and the Sunset Dunes from streets for cars to streets for people. Phil, thank you very much. Please tell us about yourself and this amazing transformation.
Perfect. Well, again, it's just a thrill to be here, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name's Phil Ginsburg, and for the last 16 and a half years, I have served as the general manager, or what we call, the director, what we call general manager of San Francisco's Parks Department. And it has been the absolute joy of my professional life. I love this job with every ounce of my being, and I am very, very proud of San Francisco's park system. Our park system is about well over 150 years old, and so I don't get to take credit for all of the decisions that have been made. There have been generations and generations of really good urban planning decisions made in San Francisco. But during my tenure, as Gil noted, we became the first city in the United States where 100% of us live within a 10-minute walk of a park. And we are 49 square miles, so we're very dense and very urban. But yet, strangely, unlike other cities around the country that perhaps have more robust public transit infrastructure or had more robust bike infrastructure, we were, perhaps too car-friendly of a city. And so I'm going to tell you San Francisco's story is how we've begun to reclaim streets for people. San Francisco politics is known as a knife fight in a phone booth. So it has not been easy, but we've had a lot of success. And as I've learned from Gil and many of you on this call, this is really important stuff. Pedestrian promenades created from former streets really transform how we gather, how we play and connect. By reclaiming streets as welcoming places for people rather than cars, cities open the door to a healthier, more vibrant, and climate-resilient public life that extends across physical, mental, social, and environmental well-being. I don't need to say this to the people on this call. You are all parkies, park advocates, and probably strong advocates for making sure that our public realm is truly for people. So these are the story of two very major and controversial former thoroughfares in San Francisco. And, again, I'm going to start with offering some things. Daniel, you can advance to the next slide, that, we all know that time outside is not just good for us, but is a necessity. Just 10 minutes in nature can ease stress and lift our mood. During the pandemic, this truth became undeniable. When we were all required to be inside, we longed for fresh air, familiar faces, and a sense of connection. We all have known this forever, but for those who are perhaps not park champions, during the pandemic, parks proved not just to be nice to haves, but must haves, not just amenities, but utilities, essential services. Parks are where we come together, build community, share culture, celebrate life. And out of the pandemic, for us anyway, came some bold ideas. But I think this happened all over the country, where cities everywhere started to reimagine streets as car-free, people-centered spaces designed for joy and health and connection. And in San Francisco, we really embraced this shift. We converted 3 routes in San Francisco. Daniel, you can keep that other slide for a second. JFK Drive in Golden Gate Park, another road, Shelley Drive in McLaren Park. Golden Gate Park is our largest public space. McLaren Park might be our second. And a space formerly known as the Great Highway, now called Sunset Dunes. They were all actually closed to cars during the pandemic, opening up safe, vibrant spaces for walking, biking, and being together safely. So a little bit about Golden Gate Park for those who've never been here or experienced it. It is San Francisco's pride and joy. It is our most visited park, drawing about 24 million visits each year across more than 1,000 acres. I am a homer and I'm biased, so with all due respect to the great parks in all of your cities, I am here to say that this is certainly one of America's treasures and one of its best urban parks. It really runs, and JFK Drive, which was a former road, runs through the park's heart. It links all of our beloved destinations, such as the Douglas Goldman Tennis Center, the Botanical Garden, Skaten Place, the Dahlia Dell, the Rhododendron Dell, 2 museums, the de Young and the Academy of Sciences, the Rose Garden, and so much more. Prior to its permanent closure to vehicles, which I'm going to speak more about in a second, this road was open to people only, meaning there were no cars allowed on this road on Sundays only, a tradition dating back to 1967. The fight over whether cars should be allowed in this space was perhaps 80 years old. During that time, the other 6 days a week, from 1967 until very recently, it remained one of San Francisco's most collision-prone streets. It was on our high injury network, which is a corridor of streets where we had the highest number of automobile, pedestrian, or bicyclist injuries. And what's really interesting, because we collected this data, and I think this road basically hosted about 80,000 vehicles a month. And 3/4 of them neither started or stopped their trip inside the park. That's very significant. That means that this beautiful space in one of America's best parks was essentially used for commute purposes. It was essentially used for people to get to where they were going, whether it was work in the mornings or home in the evenings, more quickly than they could by taking other city streets. Very antithetical to the concept of a park. People were driving on this road on JFK so that they get someplace faster. So let's go back to March of 2020. And as COVID-19 reshaped our daily life, our mayor, London Breed, made the policy decision with support from many of us to close 1.5 miles of this drive to vehicles to create space for socially distanced recreation and exercise. And what triggered it was, frankly, a little bit of hysteria from the unknown and the fear that we were all experiencing. Because prior to the street being closed, people could enjoy the park. It was open, but they were on our sidewalks and pathways where walkers were competing with runners and even bicyclists and dog walkers for use of space. And if you remember the time when we had to have safe social distancing, a lot of people were pretty freaked out to be in too close of a proximity to somebody else, even in a space like Golden Gate Park, which is 1,100 acres and has 70,000 trees in it. So we made the policy decision to close JFK Drive, frankly, with an eye towards the future. Cities are laboratories, and it's where we should experiment, and we should never, ever let a crisis go to waste. So we shut this road during the pandemic. I think it's fair to say now, knowing that this is the path that we wanted all along. And then, sure enough, this car-free promenade quickly became one of the city's most beloved open spaces. Again, a place to breathe, connect, and be. So coming out of the pandemic, after extensive public input and numerous public meetings, many of which were quite contentious, our Board of Supervisors, which is our city council, voted in April of 2022 to make this space permanently car-free. Of course, the decision prior to the city council or Board of Supervisors ruling and well after faced significant pushback. It faced pushback from our museums. We are blessed with two fabulous museums, and they are fabulous because they're in the park, and the park is fabulous because it hosts these museums. But these museums, even our Academy of Sciences, was dead set against this stretch of road becoming car-free, fearing for their economic sustainability. The decision was also opposed by ADA advocates, and I want to talk a little bit more about that because not all ADA advocates speak with the same voice. And in fact, as it turns out, while some of our mobility advocates and our senior disability advocates were very passionately opposed to this route closing to traffic, our ADA community, particularly with children with neuro differences, were extremely supportive of this road closing because it made it safe for their kids to roam and to wander. Our senior community, very much against it. Nearby neighborhoods, very much against it. Because as you all know, if you're a parkie, our elected officials and some of our neighborhood advocates simply like to put their problems inside a park, devaluing parkland along the way because it's just easier. We were even accused of recreational redlining, suggesting that by closing this stretch of route to cars, we were making this space less accessible to communities of color and to underserved communities, which, as this fight went on, we were able to compellingly disprove using data. On the other side of the coin, however, we were blessed with decades of advocacy. I mentioned that this debate had gone on for 70 years. So groups like Walk SF, the San Francisco Bike Coalition, shout out to Andy Thornley, who's on this call, Kids Safe SF. We had individual champions. Some are folk heroes in San Francisco. A gentleman by the name of David Miles, whose nickname is the Godfather of Skate. And he is our big roller skating advocate in the park. Folks like these had long envisioned a safer and more welcoming Golden Gate Park. And I flash back to before I was Parks Director, I served as as Gavin Newsom when he was mayor of San Francisco before he became governor of California. I served as his chief of staff, and one of the very first things I did in that role was broker basically a mediated settlement between those supportive of the closing JFK to cars and opening it to people and those opposed to it. And we ended up with a compromise on Saturdays that closed 3/4 of the road 6 months of the year. So we had a full Sunday closure, a 1.5 year round, and then we had a Saturday closure, which was half the distance, half the year. That mediation wasn't rocket science, but it still took all night to accomplish. Anyway, flashing back to the Board of Supervisors decision, opponents of the decision, because San Francisco is a progressive city that hates change, and B, a city where we can never have enough democracy. After the city council voted to close it, our opponents put the measure on the ballot in, I believe, November of 22. The supporters of the decision also put a competing measure on the ballot because that seems to be, I guess, a good political tactic to get people to vote for something rather than against something. People are more inspired to vote for something. So there were two ballot measures. There were lawsuits. There was just lots and lots of noise. But democracy had its moment, and JFK had its moment of the sun, and Proposition J, which closed the road permanently to cars, opening it permanently to people, passed with 63% of the vote. So 2/3 of San Francisco signed up to close this road. And you're looking at a picture now, and I want to kind of focus on that. Because one of the lessons that we've learned in San Francisco is that you can make the decision to close a road to cars, but the longer it just remains a road closed to cars as opposed to a park for people, the worse off proponents and advocates of this type of policy change are. We decided very quickly with temporary installations, pop-ups, murals, that we were going to show how good this could be, not just tell people how good it would be. So within weeks of the Board of Supervisors' decision, knowing very likely that we were going to face a ballot measure, you saw these yellow chairs all over this former street that had 80,000 cars a month. You see the planters. We put out ping pong tables and cornhole, temporary public art. We did this very quickly, shifting people's minds. And since then, visits to Golden Gate Park have climbed 36%. Nearly 7 million additional visitors annually. Attendance at both of our museums is up. Early concerns about business impacts, traffic congestion, loss of diversity simply didn't materialize. The park remains one of the most visited in the city. And if the JFK Promenade, no longer JFK Drive, if the JFK Promenade were counted separately from Golden Gate Park, it would rank the second most visited piece of public space in our city. And accessibility actually improved. A free all blue zone parking lot in the music concourse, smoother paving and accessible pathways, adaptive bike share options, a free daily shuttle connecting to public transit, and restored Muni lines reaching the Promenade Muni as our public transit. So this space now hums with energy, free concerts, a busker program, a seasonal beer garden, public art. We have Naga, the illuminated dragon, which came from Burning Man. We have serious public art. Gil, you probably know Betsy Romero, a very, very famous artist from Mexico City who repurposes tires to make statements about placemaking, immigration, and the environment. They now adorn the promenade. Halloween festivities, World Cup viewing parties, ping pong, swing dancing, roller skating. So the next chapter of the promenade belongs to all of us. I am going to very quickly, because I see I'm running out of time, talk about Sunset Dunes. This is located on what used to be the Great Highway, a 2-mile stretch along the Pacific coast. You see where it's located, right along the ocean. But yet it served as a highway for over a century for people traveling north and south along the city's west side. We closed this space too to vehicles in April 2020 to create more space for exercise and socially distanced recreation. There was also something else happening in this space, which was the impacts of climate change. This space is literally crumbling into the sea, and a part of it was going to close to cars regardless of any policy decision to close the entire thing, impeding its ability to serve as this very fast north-south thoroughfare without many traffic lights. This closure sparked even more debate. Many, of course, loved the car-free ocean views, but many others, particularly those living close to this space, worried about increased traffic on neighborhood streets. Coming out of the pandemic, a compromise was forged to reopen the Great Highway to vehicles on weekdays while keeping the weekend closures. And this pilot was approved by the Board of Supervisors in December of 22, formally adopting the weekend and holiday closure schedule for a 3-year study. But it was really kind of making nobody happy. The road closed Friday at noon, leaving a lot of Friday commuters angry and upset. And park users didn't really get to enjoy the space because, unlike what we did on the Promenade, we couldn't adorn the space with public art, benches or bike racks or play spaces because they all had to be removed by Monday morning at 9 a.m. So the advocates stepped in with some support, with some very courageous members of our Board of Supervisors, and placed a measure on the ballot, Proposition K, in November of 2025, a mayoral election year and a election year for several of our members of our Board of Supervisors. Voters approved this measure with 55% of the vote, making Sunset Dunes California's largest ever pedestrianization project. 2 miles of former roadway transformed into a coastal park for everyone. We had a public naming contest for this space. Again, a strategy to build momentum for this space that drew 4,000 suggestions on what to name the space. We got some creative and snarky ones like Erosion Park and Doomsday Park, but one name emerged, Sunset Dunes, as the clear favorite. This space is adorned by dunes, which we are in the process of restoring to prevent sand from moving rather significantly throughout the space. So this is also a climate adaptation project and an environmental initiative along with a placemaking project. This space, also JFK. These spaces require close coordination among city, state, and federal agencies and partners. Some of the ones that stepped up to help us with this were Friends of Sunset Dunes, the Surfrider Foundation, and yes, the California Academy of Sciences changed its tune, and we are very proud to have called them a partner in the effort to make Sunset Dunes for people rather than cars, and they are helping to lead the way with a dune restoration project. And a big shout out to their executive director, Scott Sampson, who actually is also a Canadian, Gil, who you probably know. He came from Vancouver. And while Scott had to navigate some tricky politics at the Academy, Scott has always been a champion for these initiatives. Environmental stewardship in these spaces is central. The California Coastal Commission gave us the permit to do this, and we received $1 million state coastal conservancy grant to begin the process of restoring native dunes. We just recently had a 100 volunteer planting day on part of it that was terrific. At the end of the day, change can be challenging, and sister agencies really do have to work together. We worked with our transportation agency to smooth traffic patterns, synchronize light signals, repave key routes, alternative routes, so that traffic could be diverted in a way that is safe for neighbors. And thanks to this broad collaboration, we were able to open this space permanently to people in just 5 months. Since mid-April, it has welcomed an average of 3,400 visitors a day, peaking at around 5,000 on weekends. Labor Day weekend saw 10,000 people a day, Friday or Saturday, Sunday, Monday in this space. This space ranks 4th among San Francisco's most visited parks. Again, the goal to these spaces is to show, don't just tell. So we quickly transform the space with interactive art, expanded performance seating, a nature exploration area for kids, a bike pump track and skills course, a skateboarding area at Slope Boulevard, which is the southern apex of the space, and of course, breathtaking ocean views. Our public input continues through online surveys and open houses to guide future improvements. This is just stage 1. We think this is a 10-year, perhaps $100 to $150 million initiative to transform the space more permanently. The political controversy is not yet over. A member of our Board of Supervisors who led the effort to transform this space into a park, believing that this is what was in the best interests of our city and, frankly, our world, was recalled in November. This piece of it breaks my heart, but he's doing just fine because he knows he probably did something more significant in his short 2-year time in office than most politicians do in a career. And his name is Joel Ingardio. And for those of you around the country and around the world, he's a hero. He really is. Just this week, the San Francisco Chronicle highlighted how runners with mobility challenges treasure the park's flat, accessible terrain, featuring a story of a man with Parkinson's disease and another story of a blind artist and marathon runner named Lord Frederick. I'll wrap up. Next slide. Gil speaks. Gil is our rabbi on this point, but as Gil notes, great public spaces often begin as bold and sometimes controversial experiments. Even Golden Gate Park in 1870 was highly controversial, criticized as too vast. Now it's our most iconic landmark. Another space in San Francisco, Patricia's Green, was born from the removal of a freeway, yet it revitalized the neighborhood and has become a cherished neighborhood space. Around the country, Central Park in New York City in 1853 was dismissed as an idea, as too swampy and too impractical. Now visited by 42 million people a year, if I have that right. And the battles over these types of issues continue in San Francisco. Our next project is to revitalize a park along our Embarcadero that was once built with a a design and a piece of public art that was intended to block the space from a freeway behind it that cut the public off from the waterfront. After the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake in San Francisco, a decade later, that freeway came down, but this antiquated park design and antiquated non-operational fountain no longer functions and is no longer appropriate to connect people to the waterfront. So we are in San Francisco's next battle over its future to revitalize that public space. Reaching a shared vision isn't always straightforward, but with transparent engagement, active listening, that doesn't mean unanimous consent, but active listening and trust building, it is possible to make lasting progress. So bigger picture, spaces like JFK Promenade and Sunset Dunes challenge the old idea of what a street must be, could be, should be. They're places where children safely learn to ride bikes, where someone can find calm on a hard day, or where a jogger might pause to play a piano. They show that car-free streets aren't just local trends. They are part of a global movement, which, again, a tip of the cap to Gil for being an evangelist on this point many years before the rest of us really understood it. You can see this movement taking place at Griffith Park Drive in LA, 34th Avenue in New York, Capel or Capel Street in Dublin, car-free days in Paris and Sao Paulo, and many, 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 many others around the world. So the work isn't done, which is why we are on this webinar together. But every new people first space strengthens community, deepens connections, and creates memories that last and build a healthier planet. So it's been a pleasure. I'll stop there.
Thank you. So it's amazing what you have done. And would you tell a little bit about the programs? Because sometimes people see parks only as infrastructure, but we need the programs. It's like the hardware and the software. Especially, why don't you talk a little about programs on small children, 0 to 4? Sometimes you go to the parks and it's 5 to 12, 12 to 18, nothing on 0 to 4 when it's the most important. And also the people over 60. Is the fastest growing segment of the population, also the segment of the population that has the most amount of leisure time, but nevertheless, people tend to think that olders, they have Alzheimer's, they're gonna die, no, it's almost 1/3 of our lives, and it's the largest amount of free time. So how do you see the role of parks with these segments? And also the role of parks uniting citizens, because they are not left or right or one party or another party. So it's a big question, but it's the last one, and I want all of us to leave with your vision, your action on dealing with these two topics.
The answer is, Gil, you're right. It's hardware and software, and I think for both hardware and software, government cannot do it alone. 21st century government cannot do it by itself. It needs partners, it needs champions, it needs community advocates, it needs philanthropy, it needs all of these things. And particularly with respect to program, having partnerships, Friends of Sunset Dunes. We work with an organization called a nonprofit called Illuminate that has done so much to help us program these spaces. With respect to 0 to 4, I highly encourage the use of nature exploration areas. You have all the materials in your own cities. There are stumps and boulders and rocks, and they invite imagination and risk for that population, that 0 to 4 population. And for seniors, whether it's a Zumba class or a yoga class or a walking class or program, these activities form community. Our ping pong tables that are in both spaces are extremely popular. So we do sprinkle these spaces with opportunities for a program for that software, as it were.
Phil, thank you very much. What an amazing presentation. It was so exciting how you showed that big transformations that took place temporary during the pandemic, during the horrible pandemic, but nevertheless, some actions were so positive that post-pandemic, they stayed. And when you were challenged and it went into a referendum, how you gathered everybody on board to win. The citizens got behind turning streets for cars, streets for people. People that walk and bike and just play and chat, people of all ages and all abilities. And you showed how park is so important for our health, not only physical health that everybody knew, but now is gaining traction that is good for our mental health, for our social health. So it's really good for everybody. Thank you. People that watch this video, please share it. Share it with elected officials, with city staff, with advocates, with media, with as many people as you can. Thank you very much, Phil, and thank you very much, everyone that watched the session live, as well as people that are looking at the recording. Thank you.